sources of irresistible delight, and the mysteries of their depths call out to faraway children in their beds. As a boy, Manuel Lopez had dreamed of the cave near his family's reservation on Bell Peak. He'd seen it in person while hiking with his father up to Mirror Lake, but he'd never stopped to inspect it. Manuel remembered the legends his father had told him about the cave, of wild animals and bandits and vengeful spirits, and heeded his warning never to explore it. But in the dead of night, that maw of rock and all its pregnant darkness loomed in Manuel's mind. He dreamed of following his old man inside, and of shadowy things dragging him down into a bottomless chasm. He dreamed of undiscovered riches beneath the earth, and of lost precious heirlooms of his people waiting to be reclaimed. As the decades passed, that cave became a thing of grim curiosity, feeling at once repulsive and alluring. Manuel grew up, but he never ceased to wonder. Now, as he walked in the shadow of Bell Peak, Manuel realized the dreams had returned. Fragments of a nightmare came to him over the duration of his hike, and as he passed through forest and field, he tried to assemble the pieces. He remembered the boy and a copse of trees, and something moving in the distance. A storm, however, washed the color out of the world, and all of it blurred together in the fraying of memory. Just like in his dream, the day was dark and wet. The mountain's icy breath seeped through the pines all around Onway, nipping at his ears and jangling the various charms affixed to his old hiking staff. It was late autumn now, and though the first snows were still weeks away, a month of rain had pummeled the land to a soggy pulp. The season had been unusually wet, and each squall seemed to portend the bitter winter to come. Up ahead trotted Nomi, a precocious husky mix who loved the outdoors even more than her owner did. She sniffed every rock and flower and ran circles around the trees in fruitless attempts at catching the chicories that scrabbled over their branches. Throughout the 8 years of her life, she and Onway had explored almost all of the mountain and its foothills except the western face, whose terrain was treacherous and shrouded in dark woods. The day's journey would take them to Ash Hill, which rose above that eerie forest and offered a view of the distant mountains beyond it. It was a place for days that demanded a particular solitude. There, Onway could escape his troubles, at least for a little while. Normally, the hike to get there was about an hour, but today it had taken more than 2. Onway hardly paid attention to the trail as he wandered. Instead, he faster he cycled through the images in his memory, the quicker they faded, and eventually Onwe's mind returned to his surroundings. The dream vanished like mist on the morning slopes. Onwe had this nightmare many times before, or at least variants of it. He knew the boy was Akantha, his best friend from childhood, and he sensed that Akantha wanted to show him something. But Onwe always woke up before he could discern the thing through the heaving woods. After all these years, it remained obscured in the place just beyond the edge of his memory. And what had Akantha meant by father? More than 2 decades had passed since the boy's disappearance, but the dreams rarely abated. At the worst times, they were terrifying, haunting Onwe in the dark of his home and weighing ceaselessly on his thoughts. He tried his best at interpreting the ones he could make sense of, and he scoured the wilderness for any place that looked like the tree line from his dreams. Alas, the forest and rock formations of Pale Peak all pretty much looked the same, and no amount of exploring had unraveled the mystery that had brought Onwe's life to ruin. The question echoed in his mind today as it had since 1944. What happened to Akantha Riverstone? Nomi's cheerful yipping pulled Onwe back to the present. She approached her master and gazed up into his eyes, perhaps noticing something was bothering him. He gave her a strong pat, which sent her zipping off down the trail in excitement, then bounding back to him again. As they rounded the bend, the pines thinned, and a grassy hill came into view against the grey sky. "Looks like you found it," Onwe said to the dog. He quickened after her, his spirit renewed by the sight of an important landmark. By the time he reached the top of the hill, Nomi was already rolling around in the grass, dirtying the white of her coat. Onwe gave her some water from his canteen, then leaned against his hiking staff and took in the view. Emerald grass fluttered in the wind all around him, and 12 yards ahead, the hill dropped off sharply toward the tree line far below. That was the edge of a woodland he'd never explored, and he prayed it was not where Akantha had gone all those years ago. "Bears out there," Onwe's father used to say, trying to scare him as a boy. "Biggest ones around. Man-eaters." Long ago, Onwe had spent many mornings here with his father, sitting on a fallen log and trading stories or practicing the old language. It was one of the few places he could still feel his dad's presence, and so Onwe had named the hill after him. With those memories embedded in the landscape, he could call upon his father's wisdom with each visit and be united with him through their mutual love of the outdoors. Truly, Ashiel was a beautiful place, not least for its spiritual aspect. The wildwoods below sprawled out to a horizon of distant, jagged peaks, staring at the open sky. All around, rock formations jutted from the earth, which had served as fortresses for Onwe and his childhood friends. High above, the eyes perked up, and she jumped to her feet in search of the noise. It changed in pitch as it approached, and through the clouds overhead appeared a small jet. It sputtered against the choppy air and pitched back and forth on its axis, surely thrashing the poor souls on board. Onwe had seen plenty of aircraft pass over the mountain through the years, but none before had ever come this low, nor flown so erratically. The plane's awkward glide turned to a spiraling dive, heralded by a shriek of its engines. It plummeted hundreds of feet in a matter of seconds, filling the valley with a hideous noise as it cut against the wind. "Holy shit," Onway said, already feeling in his body what his brain didn't want to admit. This plane was going down. A moment later, it slammed into the earth in a burst of flame. The explosion echoed across the mountain, terrifying Nomi and sending hundreds of birds soaring into the air throughout the valley. The dog fled to Onwe, who stood fright frozen at the edge of the drop-off and cowered there beside his feet. A terrible silence then followed, and plumes of smoke wafted from the distant trees. "Holy shit," Onwe repeated, trying to regain control over his body. "Oh my god, those people!" He crouched down to console Nomi. She licked at him nervously, reading his expression and growing more alarmed with each passing moment. The two remained pressed together in shock until another loud pop erupted from the crash site. At the sound, Onwe sprinted back down the trail. It would take a long time to get back to town, but he had to notify the tribal police. If anyone had survived this crash, they were now depending on him to send help. "The Nagayani," Onwe yelled, the dog already blazing past him. "Home, Nomi, home!" And I will read you another brief extract in order to exemplify one of the reasons why I like Felix Blackwell's writing style so much, and why I recommend you read his books. High above, the clouds began to part. Great sunbeams came stabbing through, illuminating the town against a backdrop of ominous dark. The rain would soon return, but for now, autumn rage looked like a holy beacon on the grim mountain. Wet windows glittered all around, and the water dripping from rooftops sparkled with golden light. I love this description, and this is one of many. I tried to pick one early on in the story which doesn't give away the plot or anything important to the story. I hope you enjoyed my reading. I hope it made you curious to read his book. I look forward to hearing from you. Please comment